97 days, but who's counting? Looking forward to being back in Ames, maybe about 3 months from now. And clearly we're reaching out to the people in Iowa, and particularly in the communities around Ames, and encouraging them to be involved in the strong poll process, critical in selecting the nominees of each party, and hopefully this will be an opportunity for me to reach out to people in Iowa tonight and get a chance to hear their perspectives and respond to questions they may have. So with that,
Governor, your campaign today acknowledged that your wife gave $150 to Planned Parenthood in 1994. Does this give your opponents, who are already suspicious of your position on abortion, fresh ammunition?
Gosh, I was effectively pro-choice at that time. And I think I made that pretty clear. I was in the 90s, I've been true up until about 2 years ago. I was effectively pro-choice, and I indicated that I have changed my position. That's true as a couple of years ago, and wrote an op-ed piece to that effect, so that shouldn't be any particular surprise.
But do you anticipate it'll be used against you?
You know, it's really hard for me to suggest what people will do. I'm not going to guess what other campaigns will do. Hopefully, I think I made it pretty clear that I was that I had a position that at that time said publicly I would protect a woman's right to choose. I know that there's some campaigns that want to keep reminding people of that, and that's fine. I'm happy to remind people of that. It's interesting that if you move from being pro-life to pro-choice, there's very little interest in that. It's seen as being just the appropriate thing to do. But if you move the other direction, there's some who can't get enough of that. And in my view, the right choice is to be pro-life. It's something which I recognized about 2.5 years ago. Proud of that change. I'm not going to apologize to anybody for having become pro-life, but I was back in the 90s effectively pro-choice.
What made the change?
You want to hear that?
What made the change?
You haven't heard that? We just had a debate. I'm happy to tell you about that. Let's see. When I first ran for office, I was personally pro-life, but I wondered what should the role of government be as related to abortion, and concluded that I would protect a woman's right to choose under the law as it existed at that time. About 2.5 years ago, I can't remember the exact date, as we were debating stem cell research, and particularly that portion related to cloning and embryo farming, I concluded that we have taken Roe v. Wade mentality to such a level that we're now talking about cloning, creating new lives, and that the Roe v. Wade mentality had gone too far. I wrote an op-ed piece that, in my view, it was time for states to be able to make their own choice in this regard, and that a federal pronouncement, a one-size-fits-all Roe v. Wade mentality, was not appropriate, and I was pro-life. And that's a position that's been out there now for a couple of years.
But does the fact that your wife contributed, does it contradict at all? Like you were saying that you're always personally pro-life, but you wondered about the role of government. I mean, your wife contributes money. That could be taken as a contradiction.
Her contributions are her, not for me, and her positions I don't think are terribly relevant to my campaign. My position is what I think is relevant for my campaign, and I'm pretty straightforward. I'm not trying to have it both ways here. I was effectively pro-choice, and I'm pro-life, and I'm not going to apologize for that. There have been other great Americans who had the same recognition that they were wrong, and I'm just one of those who's willing to admit it. I was wrong. I am pro-life, and that is something which I think is the course that Ronald Reagan and Henry Hyde and George Herbert Walker Bush took, and for me the decision was reached over a period of time. I was very concerned about the issue and recognized the needs of the unborn child, as well as the sensitivity to the interests of women and their concerns. But the point where I decided it was time to indicate that I had changed my view came following the debate of cloning and embryo farming.
Governor, I'd like to follow up on a question that Mike had earlier today. He talked about Al Sharpton, and you made it clear that you didn't know how to interpret where his motives were and that sort of thing. I wonder if you think that this conflict that's played out in the media, if it is a conflict, if you view it as a positive to get this issue out there and dealt with now, as opposed to I mean, do you view anything positive coming out of it in terms of being able to talk about?
Do I think a bigoted statement is positive?
No, the discussion of it, sir.
No, do I think a bigoted statement is positive? No, I do not. And I think it was a very unfortunate choice of words on his part. I don't know what he was thinking at the time. I can't ascribe a motive to him. I think it was a very unfortunate, un-American thing for him to say. And again, I can't ascribe motive to it, but that's just the nature of what he has said, and I think it's very unfortunate.
I mean the dialogue, sir. I mean the dialogue that this starts. Could that be positive?
I think I've said what I'm going to say, which is it's very unfortunate. I think it was a bigoted statement, and I have no interest in seeing bigoted statements about my faith or anyone else's faith put into the public discourse.
Governor, Sharpton actually came back and put out a statement. I don't know if you've seen it. He basically says that he was talking in response to when Hitchens was making this critique of religious belief in general, and he was saying, there's a Republican candidate for president who belonged to a church until the 1960s that believed a doctrine of under the curse of Ham that promoted inequality, and so Sharpton said he was responding to that and not implying that Mormons don't believe in God.
And he was implying then what?
He says that
I hear the response, but he's saying people who believe in God wouldn't vote for a Mormon, or wouldn't vote for Romney, or wouldn't vote for a Republican.
He was saying believers in general. This is what he says. He says believers in general would not vote for somebody like that on political grounds, not religious grounds. And he's talking believers as opposed to atheists is what he's saying. But I guess the other thing he said in the statement that's relevant is that he says he thinks it's fair game to ask you about, did that doctrine in your church and did you belong to the church in the 1960s at that point? Do you think it's fair game to talk about that?
People can ask any question you'd like to talk about, but his statement was a bigoted statement. It was unfortunate for him to say it. He is. I hear the explanation you describe. I haven't heard his exact words, so I can't respond exactly to his words, but his comment, the words he used were bigoted and wrong. If that's not what he meant to say, then he should say what he meant to say. What was the language he wanted to express? But it was wrong, and bigotry has no place in America. And if someone else mischaracterized the views of my faith or myself, that's something else entirely. But the statement of the nature he made just doesn't have a place in the political or religious sphere, in my own view.
Do questions of your faith seem to be fairly constant questions of your faith, take away from your ability to tell Americans why you're running for president, why you should be the nominee?
Actually, if you look at the polls in the states where I spend the most time, these early primary states, it seems that the people in this country are not particularly interested in religion. There are a few people who are, but the great majority of people I talk to are interested in choosing a person of faith to lead the country. They don't choose their political leadership based on the church they go to. They look for the person who has their values and a vision for the future in which they have confidence. And I hear that time and again, and the fact that I'm getting great support in some of the early primary states like Iowa, New Hampshire, and the new poll from Michigan today, I think is pretty clear evidence that people are tired of divisiveness over religion. Frankly, it's people in other parts of the world, some of them who are fighting, that divide over religion. Americans unite over religion and over the right of people to believe as they choose. And the tenet in our Constitution that we shall not apply a religious test for qualification to office in the United States is something I believe the great majority of Americans subscribe to. But apparently the comment made by Reverend Sharpton is not consistent with that, and I think that's very unfortunate.
Governor, how do you